Well, hello everybody. I hope you had a wonderful, wonderful Easter. I know I did, and I'll tell you what, he is risen. He is risen indeed. Anyway, I hope you had, like I said, I hope you had a wonderful Easter, and we're just going to get right back to a little bit of math here. Let's just see what we've got going today. Today, what we're going to do is solving quadratics with square roots, and under Delta Math, it's going to be level 1. Let me show you. Okay, it says at the top completing the square, and I'll show you what that looks like. But we're going to do solve quadratics with square roots, level 1 today and level 2 tomorrow. Okay, so take out your math notebook and let's just go ahead and write this down. Solving quadratics with square roots, and we're going to do the level 1 problems. Okay, let me make sure, are we focused? Looks like it. Okay, so the first problem I'm going to do looks like this. 5 parentheses x minus 8 quantity squared plus 10 equals 15. Okay? Now, you might be tempted to look at this and say, oh, I have to FOIL. But we actually don't. Since we're solving, we want to find the value of x. Okay? What we're going to do is isolate the x minus 8 squared. We're going to isolate that. First, I need to isolate this term. So I'm going to subtract 10 from both sides. So I have 5 parentheses x minus 8 squared equals 15 minus 10 is 5. Okay? Now I need to isolate, again, I need to isolate the term, I need to isolate the x. Okay? I've already isolated the term. Now I need to get rid of the coefficient of 5. So I'm going to divide both sides by 5. So the 5 goes away. I have x minus 8 quantity squared equals 1. Okay? Now, what I want to do is isolate. I want to get x minus 8 alone. So what I'm going to do is take the square root of both sides. So I have x minus 8 equals. Now the square root of 1 is actually positive and negative 1, because positive 1 squared is 1 and negative 1 squared is also 1. So the square root of 1 actually has 2 square roots, both the positive and the negative. So we put plus or minus 1. Okay, that might be some new notation. Okay, now I need to solve for x. So I need to add 8 to both sides. Okay, I want you to see what this looks like. X equals, put the 8 first and then the plus or minus 1. So I have 8 plus or minus 1. That's going to actually give me my two answers. So my two answers are x equals 8 plus 1 and x equals 8 minus 1. 8 plus 1 is 9, so x equals 9, or x equals 8 minus 1 is 7. So my two answers are 9 or 7. Okay? Now, let's just check real quick. You don't have to check every time, although it is helpful in math to check every time. I'm going to check x equals 9. 5 times 9 minus 8 squared plus 10, does that equal 15? Well, 9 minus 8 is 1. 1 squared is 1. So 5 plus 10 does equal 15. So that checks out. Let's check x equals 7. 5 times 7 minus 8 squared plus 10, does that equal 15? Well, 7 minus 8 is negative 1. But we know that negative 1 squared is 1. So 5 times 1 plus 10 does equal 15, and that one checks out. So those are our two answers. Remember, in Delta Math, you're going to submit your answer, and you're going to put in 9, 7. And I believe the comma will split it up into two parts. So your answer is 9 or 7. Okay, let's do another one. Number 2. Actually, I'm going to go to another page. Number 2. 3 times x squared minus 1 minus 2 equals negative 2. Now notice this is a little different than our first one. Our first one was the quantity x minus 8 squared. This one, the x squared, the 2, is in with the x. So it's slightly different. Let's just see how we're going to unravel this. Again, we're going to isolate this term with the variable. So I need to get rid of this negative 2. So I'm going to add 2 to both sides. And I have 3 times x squared minus 1 equals 0. Now I'm going to divide by the coefficient of 3. So I have x squared minus 1 equals 0. Now I'm going to isolate the x squared. So I'm going to add 1 to both sides. So I have x squared equals 1. Now when I take the square root, I get x equals, again, the square root of 1 is both positive and negative 1. So now my answer is x equals positive 1 or negative 1. And I believe you have the option on Delta Math to pull up, when they ask for the answer, I believe you have the option to click on a key that says plus or minus. So you'll click that key, plus or minus, and then type in 1, and then you'll hit submit. And that'll give you the correct answer. Okay, I'm going to do a couple more because every now and then there's an unusual situation. So let's look at number 3. 11 minus 2x squared equals 5. Okay, well here I have a term containing x, and I have a constant here and a constant here. So I'm going to combine the constants, and I'm actually going to combine them on this side. Minus 11 minus 11, negative 2x squared equals negative 6. Now the reason I didn't put it in standard form and set it equal to 0 is because I didn't have a linear x term. I didn't have this. I didn't have like 2x squared plus 5x minus 12. Okay, there is no linear term in this particular problem. So I'm going to isolate the x squared term. Now I'm going to divide by the coefficient of negative 2. So I have x squared equals negative 6 divided by a negative 2 is a positive 3. Now like back here, I was left with x squared equals a number. So I'm going to take the square root to get x equals plus or minus the square root of 3. Since the square root of 3 is not a perfect square, we're going to leave it as a square root. We're going to leave it as a radical. So that's going to be our answer. And again, when you answer it on Delta Math, you can hit the option, hit the plus or minus key, and then they actually give you an option to pull up the square root key. So you're going to hit the plus or minus key, that'll pull that up. And then you can pull up the square root. You can hit the square root, and that'll pull that up, and then you'll enter the number 3. And that's what you'll submit as your answer. Just like back here, we submitted plus or minus 1 as our answer. You'll submit plus or minus root 3. Okay, let's do number 4. Here we have x minus 2 quantity squared equals 9. Okay. Here, we're ready to go right to taking the square root. That leaves x minus 2 equals the square root of 9 is plus or minus 3. Again, I'm going to add 2 to both sides. So x equals 2 plus or minus 3. Now this is similar to the first one that we did, where we ended up with 8 plus or minus 1. Here we have 2 plus or minus 3. So our answer is x equals 2 plus 3 and x equals 2 minus 3. Here, x equals 5. Here, x equals 2 minus 3 is negative 1. So our answer is 5 or -1. Okay, we are almost done. Let me just see. Yeah, actually, that takes care of it. Yep, that's all I have for us today. So now you're going to go to Delta Math, and you're going to try the problems on Delta Math, and have a good day and work well. And I will just chat with you again tomorrow. Okay, bye-bye.